Hello, alright, you're listening to the Gritty Bowman, home of gritty bow hunting films, interviews, tall tales, and a wee bit of manly boasting.
I'm South Cox, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowman.
Hey, this is Corey Jacobson, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowman.
We born and raised outdoors, and you've been listening to the Gritty Bowman.
There you go.
I'm Casey.
And I'm Jordan.
And you're watching
The Gritty Bowman.
Hey, folks, I think today's podcast is pretty cool. On this episode of Gritty Bowman, Aron Snyder shares his experience hunting bighorn sheep with Phil Mendoza in some epic trophy country in Colorado. Aron is a super talented photographer, and he takes some amazing pictures on this trip. It's cool if you just want to listen to this podcast, but it's totally worth watching it. I have added a bunch of photos from this trip to the podcast, which I'm not going to lie, makes this podcast hyper cool. You should watch it. And I've added a little video from my Prince of Wales blacktail hunt in Alaska to support a tangent that we go down when talking about rain gear. Aron talks about the lessons he learned on this trip. He talks about gear. He talks about angle compensation for long-range steep shots and explains that rangefinders do not properly account for these shots even when using angle compensation technology. And we've got something cool we just set up last week with the Gritty Bowman. We now have 2 versions of the podcast on iTunes and Podbean. Basically, we created a new podcast called Gritty Bowman TV. This podcast contains the video version of all the podcasts and other films we've created. Just like the audio version of the podcast, you can download all of these, the video podcasts to your mobile device to watch anytime. Just go to iTunes or Podbean and find Gritty Bowman TV and click subscribe. Subscribe to both of our podcasts, the audio version and the video version. Basically, Gritty Bowman TV has everything that can be found on our YouTube channel, but the difference is you can download these shows to your personal mobile device and watch them anywhere you like, regardless of internet connection, which you cannot do with YouTube.
If you like the show, please go to our website at grittybowman.com and subscribe to this podcast and tell your mates and pals about us. Do us a favour and please take a moment to leave us a rating or a review on iTunes or on our YouTube channel. Send your questions and podcast ideas to grittybowman@gmail.com. If you're listening to this on iTunes, you can see the video version of this podcast on our website at www.grittybowman.com.
Those of you looking for some great elk hunting information, go check out elk101.com. Corey Jacobson is a good friend of ours and a true friend of the Gritty Bowman podcast. We geek out on elk hunting, and this site helps to satisfy our intense elk cravings. Go there. Go there to see elk-related articles, elk hunting videos, gear reviews, and more. And go and ask questions in the forums. A lot of quality information is being shared there. We are not paid by Elk 101. We just love their stuff. Go check them out. All right, enough rambling. Here is today's podcast.
All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Bowman podcast. I am back with Aron Snyder, who has just returned from an epic mountain sheep hunt, and he's going to tell us about it today. This is our second or third or fifth or 10th take of this because of our computers this morning. Hanging up.
I got
Snacks, microphones, every technical difficulty imaginable seems to be occurring today. So we're gonna power through it though. And Aron just got back from a really, really cool trip, at least from my perspective, because you're sharing photos online, and for folks that are going to be watching this podcast, they can see the country that you're going to be talking about today because you have some gorgeous photographs of it. And basically, the photos look pretty gnarly. Like you guys are like straight up and down. How much elevation did you gain on this trip?
It was in one day. We, I clocked it on my GPS. We gained and lost. I don't know what we gained and lost the entire trip, but we in one day gained and lost just over 7,200 feet. And I know the most I've ever gained and lost in one day was in this same wilderness area. It's not distance that gets you. It's the elevation gained and lost. It's just unbelievable. And so looking at it on a map, if you're like, oh, it's only 1.5 miles from here to here, that could take you 5 hours just because of the climbs. And some of the photos that you've seen, and I sent you this morning in Dropbox. Like literally, Phil, who had the tag, and I'll give the backstory in a minute, was he was in a good mood the entire hunt, but he got a little bit tired of me saying, "Oh, there's a grassy patch right there. We can make it right up that 50-degree slope," which most people, until you're on a 50-degree slope, I mean, you're going to probably die, or you're going to be in pretty bad shape by the time you get to the bottom.
If you slip.
So, but a little bit of a backstory on this. Last year, a buddy of mine drew this tag, and he was all jacked up on Mountain Dew. He's pumped to get this tag, and I had to go to the territory, so I wasn't there for the hunt. Excuse me, I had to eat a snack. We had some technical difficulties, and I got hungry during the middle of it. But he drew the tag, and so I went in there and scouted with him, and we started early, like May, which is not smart. 12,000 feet in May is not the greatest time in the world, but so we scouted the area. I knew it really well before. I knew it really, really well after. And so I was gone. My buddy got on a big ram in there, like a ram that most people think you were lying. If you shot it in this unit, it was big enough, but he didn't end up getting able to pull it out. He didn't get the ram. Well, I have another buddy of mine that drew it this year, and his name's Phil Mendoza. He's actually won the Train to Hunt national championship three times. Or once, I don't. Anyway, he does very well at that. He owns No Limits Archery. Super cool guy. I've known him for years. He drew the tag, and so we had some technical difficulties in life with Phil, because Phil owns the archery range, and he built from the ground up. He owns a construction company type of thing, a brand new shop. Well, anybody that's ever built anything and had to deal with permits, it was just an epic show. I mean, just a pain. So there he is, thinking he was going to open a couple months ago. Well, he opened the day after we went on the hunt. He finally got the final permit for whatever it was he was missing, and he actually got a text, and he said, "Hey, my legs don't hurt anymore. The shop's finally open." So anyway, we weren't able to go in there and scout as much as we wanted to. He and I went in there one time, and I actually saw a couple sheep while we were in there, and that was it. But I knew the sheep were there. So fast forward till 6, 7, 8 days ago, whatever it was, we get dropped off, and it just started up. Like nothing was going. Braden, one of the guys going with us, Forsyth, he's just a machine. He's a 7% body fat dude. He's going with us, me and Phil. And then we have a buddy of ours, Aaron Kessie, picking us up to drop us off in this crazy UTV rhino looking thing. We were supposed to leave at 2:30. Well, that turned into leaving at 6:30, 5-hour drive down. We got to take that UTV, just bouncing the bullets right off you. Just horrible. So it's dark as crap, and we're 13,000 some feet. Kessie waves goodbye, takes off, right? Drives back down the mountain. Unbelievable guy. Can't thank him enough for dropping us off. But it wasn't enough for him to drop us off. We hike down, set up our bivvies, hop in, go to sleep, jump in the fart sack. I wake up, and at 4 in the morning, I turn my phone. At 13,000 feet, you got pretty good service. And I'm like, search and rescue. I'm like, coming to get us? What the hell happened? And then I'm like, Phil, calm. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Well, Phil somehow hit his Delorme in reach for the search and rescue to come get us.
Oh, no.
And so, they're calling my wife and his brother, Raphael. He's trying to short story long, they get a hold of Kessie, who's literally 2 hours from us.
Right.
At midnight. Drives back up. It's around aimlessly at 13,000 feet. And if you haven't been to 13,000 feet, there ain't a whole lot of oxygen up there if you're not used to it. So finally at like 5:30 in the morning, I'm calling everybody. I'm like, we're good to go. Nothing wrong. I call Kessie. He's right above us, like 200 yards trying to find us. I'm like, dude, we're good. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, no problems, man. So we hear him so the trip started off a little rough. So from where we went, we were like 13.2 or 13.1. You drop down to like 10.8. You climb back up to 12.8, 13. It's just straight up. So we were taking our time. So we get up there day before season. and it's raining cats and dogs, just pissing on us. Wind's blowing and it's cold. I had the bright idea to try some new gear out for this hunt, which never do. So we split up. I banked to the left. These guys banked to the right. And we're ridge running knife edge ridges. Like it's nasty. I found a band of rams. I'm like, oh, money. I'm like, they're right there. We're good. So I go back. I tell these guys, and they're like, well, what should we do? And I said, well, we can't camp up here. I said, one, there's nothing flat. We can't even get a bivvy in here. So we had to hike back down to camp, which was 11 something, 6 or 8, roughly. I tell you what it was. It was a long damn ways down to the bottom. So we camped there. The next morning we go back up, no rams. We're all looking, and there's 3 of us. So I'm like, Phil goes down, and we sneak in because we're thinking they're going to still be bedded in this one area. Nothing, right? Houdini, Kaiser Sorsay, they're gone. I'm like, well, fudge. Yeah, and you can see for miles, and we can't find them. So we get the bright idea. We're going to split up. We're going to find these rams. So I go way to the left, and I'm on literally this knife edge ridge. I dig out a little sniper's hide where my ass doesn't hurt. I got my pad out. I'm like laid back. And then a storm comes in, and I'm talking full on, like hail like this, just pelting it out of me. And I'm like, and then fog comes in, and I can't use my phone to play with. Everybody's like, oh, you go away in the nature to get away from your phone or whatever, right? Okay, so I play with my phone, but we're in there for 8 days. The days don't last forever, and I had a battery pack, but this is our way to get off the mountain, so we can't burn our batteries out. So anyway, I put the phone up and just take it like a man. 45 minutes. Hail is like this deep on me. And then the fog lifts. I'm half asleep. And the sheep are right below me. 57 yards bedded down. And I'm like, man, and I'm pinned down at this point. Like, it's close enough to where I'm like, man, if I roll right, there's a good chance they're going to catch movement and bounce. And these sheep it's so steep where they're at. I'm like, man, you'd have to deduct if it was 70 yards, you'd probably shoot them for 40, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking around, and the whole thing. We're not going to use cell phones, trying to be ethical. So I'm trying to take my pad, my orange pad. I'm like, man, there's no way this is going to work. If I hold it this high, the sheep are going to see me. So I roll over. I look like a walrus trying to hump off a rock. I roll over like 3 times, and I'm like, I think I'm good. I can get out of here now, trying not to be quiet. And I'm not exactly a set of car keys. I'm a pretty big dude, so I'm trying to be low to the ground. So I low crawl over, and this is off. This is up in the ground. I'm like, piss on it. I ain't taking shit. I'm running, and I'm going to go find Phil. So Phil sees my fat ass just hauling across this bowl, and he obviously puts 2 and 2 together. And I stop, and I look, and I'm like, so here he comes. Well, by the time he gets to me, I'm like, dude, they were right below me. They were right there. And I'm like, but they're over there now. And, you can see the lights popped on that, he might as well just rappel down. So he gets to where he drops down, and that's a commitment, dude. It's bad. It's straight down. And I'm like, man, we're going to pull this shit off on the first day. This is awesome. Well, the Rams just just a fluke. No, they didn't get blown out. They just fed over at an unattainable spot. Like, well, with a rifle, we could have killed him 700 times. So Phil has to climb back up, and talk about the ubu face. He's like, bollocks. So he had to climb all the way back up. And then now they're closer to me than him, even though when he left on the stalk, it was the other way around. So I'm like, you think you can make it down over there? And he's doing some cliffhanging to get over there. And the weather starts again. And I see him slide like 40 yards. And he's like, and he climbs back up. He's like, yeah, I can't do it. I'm going to die. And I was like, dude, you almost rolled down to him anyway. I was like, that was intense. So we buttoned it up for the day. And thank God we did, because we got back. It rained for 12 hours straight. Rain and hail and snow. So we're stuck in the bivvies for, whatever. So I'm like, the next morning, let's let our stuff dry out. We'll head back up there. And so we didn't get 9 o'clock, whatever. Go back up that freaking cliff. And because we couldn't, just the way that the terrain dictated, there was just no better place to camp. And we were by a lake. You'll see it in the photos. So we get to the top, and just blind house luck, I picked those rams out from 900 yards away, bedded on the ridgeline. I'm like, get down. Because we're silhouetted like idiots.
Yeah.
I mean, we crept down, we got low to go to the top, but still. And so we lay there, and he's having trouble. I mean, they're blended in so well. I've been on some sheep hunts, so I actually saw what looked like off-colored rocks, which happened to be a band of rams.
Got it.
And I'm like, well, there ain't no way you're getting to them. I was like, we're just gonna have to wait, which seemed at the time 55, 60-degree day. Like, we'll just chill all day. Once they make their move, we'll bounce on them. Well, man, it turned out to be basically I called it a sandwich is what it was. It was bad. So we were watching them, and I'm like, man, if they came off the cliffs and they came into the basin, and I'm like, man, if they came into that basin that far to the right, I think they're going to feed back up, which is where I saw them the day before season. So Phil, and nothing is easy at 13,000 feet, right? So he has to go way around, and we had to get these hand signs, and that never works, right? It never works. So Braden's in the middle in case he can see me better, and he has to run to Phil. And Phil's way over here, and I'm over here. And Phil is literally, ideally, they're going to feed right up to him, and he'll have a shot. Well, that, 5 hours later, right? Like, we sat there, like an idiot. I could low crawl down to get a better bird's eye view. So I low crawl down. Well, I actually ass crawled or crab walked, whatever you want to call it, down to where I could finally see him. And I'm watching the whole band, and I'm trying to signal to Phil with our hand signals that we're good. Hour goes by, 2 hours go by, 3 hours go by. Finally, there's some movement to where they're like, okay, they're definitely going to feed up to Phil. And the weather at this point was pretty good. Well, all right, they start to feed up a decent amount. They're a third towards Phil. So they're probably 350 yards away, 300 yards away. Well, they get to where they're halfway up the mountain, and I'm giving the hand signal they're halfway up, dude. We're going to make this happen. You not, lightning went off so close behind me, I'm pretty sure I pissed myself. And those rams, it scared the crap out of them, and they ran back downhill. So I'm like, no, not all day. Don't run. Well, at this point, it's hailing pretty good. So I curl around my backpack like a little girl because I'm trying to get out of the wind. The gear I brought was not the greatest, but we'll talk about that later. My nose, I'm wind burnt. I'm trying to put my collar of my shirt over my nose because it was sunburnt. Now it's wind burnt. Well, needless to say, I look over and I can see Phil laying on his back with his bow in his lap in the middle of that 45, 50-degree slope, shivering like a cat in razor blades. I can see like this, and I'm thinking, well, if he can make it, I can make it, because I know if I get up, these rams are going to see me and they're going to bounce. So I'm pretty much stuck, and I'm like, but Phil's stuck too, so it's equally crappy for both of us. Well, he gets down, and I'm like, okay, the rams calm down. The big ram, well, big for Colorado, decent ram, 165, 168, it's in its bed. And I'm like, now keep in mind with Phil, but they call him the Iceman. He has a pile of animals in his house, giant elk, giant deer. He doesn't miss very often. He's won several world championships, shoots ASA. Well, he sticks an arrow right above that ram, right in its bed. Like, bed here, arrow here. The ram gets up, they kind of run around, and I'm like,
Bollocks.
he missed. I'm like, how the hell did he miss? So he gets another shot. Same thing, right over its back. Well, that was the end of that game, right? That's 8 hours of work total by the time it's said and done. I get over there, and I'm shaking so bad, like uncontrollably, just shivering. And Phil comes up, and we start talking about the rangefinder. Now, Tim Gillingham, he's multiple-time world champion. Insane. He runs gold tip arrows. Tim has a theory, since rangefinders on bow mode are figured out off of cosine, that after 22 degrees and after basically a certain angle and a certain distance, it's flawed. Now, Tim sent me all the data he had on it earlier this year, and I tested it, and it was all correct, what he had. And basically, Phil had a 74 or 76-yard shot at a 50-degree slope. Well, if you do the mathematics and the deductions with a clinometer, he was 3 yards hot from what bow mode said twice, which is about how high he hit, 6 inches over its back, roughly. Of course, mean, it's not a chip shot, and Andy was on a steep slope. So we start to talk about the bow mode thing, and
This
so
bow
Phil's
mode
like,
on the rangefinder is what you're talking
yeah,
about.
meaning there's straight line distance, the angle. Anyway, so
Angle compensation calculated by the rangefinder isn't exact once you get beyond a certain range at a certain slope
and a certain angle. So on the way in, Phil fires a confirmation arrow, and in the dirt bank, which hits a rock. So that arrow's gone. So then he fires 2 at that sheep, and those break. So we're down 3. So then after missing, he's like, well, man, I have got to shoot this bow. So we go to camp, huge, steep, angled cliff, and he ranges a rock at 78 yards. Okay, so he figures out the cut chart he has on his forearm with the clinometer, smokes the rock, breaks another arrow. And I'm like, and we're talking a rock like this at 78 yards just to confirm. And I'm like, well, the angle compensation on your wrist and clinometer or whatever is right. The bow mode is not correct, right? So we take it off of bow mode, and we're going to use clinometer.
Yeah.
And
But now you've smoked 4 arrows?
Out
of how many?
7.
Oh.
So, and I've gotten into debates with guys on forums about how many arrows to bring on a backpack hunt. And I'm loaded for bear. I come in with a lot of arrows because it's grouse season. You can shoot marmots. I like to shoot, so I'm shooting everything. I eat, I'm not a big marmot eater unless I'm starving, but I'll eat the grouse every night. Yeah. So Phil is doing some mathematical equations and some deductive reasoning, and he's like, shit, I better not miss anymore, right? We're down to 3. So the next day, maneuver around trying to get an eye on these rams, figuring out where we're going to go, climb all the way down to get another angle in a different basin, climb back up, and the rams are right where we just were, bedded down. And I'm like,
how far did you were there, you walk up
1,700 feet is what we dropped and climb back up. And people, I'm sure when you're not there, you always have somebody, like when Phil missed and he posted online, some dude said, Phil, you need to bend at the hips. He's one of the best shots in the nation, right? He's got her figured out, right? He doesn't need any coaching on how to shoot. It was just the angle, right? We climb all the way out of there. And the thing is, with this terrain, if you truly want to check every nook and cranny, it's not like we're running around the mountain scaring off sheep. You can see 3 basins, and then you want to look into a 4th. You may have to drop some elevation. I mean, we were very methodical about each one. So we're watching these ones. It was the same band Phil was on the day before. They went into the trees, which is why we didn't see them. And just happenstance, we catch them bedded, and 3 of them come out of the trees and bedded with the other one. So they just hung out in the trees hiding. And so this should tell you how far it was. Tree line's 11.5, about. Well, so this is Monday now. What day did I talk to you on the phone? Tuesday?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is Monday. So we're like, well, we can kill those. That's a very killable position. So everything's always easier from the top. I'm like, oh yeah, we'll just go right over there and we'll hook down and no problem. It was bad, right? We get over to that. Like how somebody didn't jack themselves up is a miracle, because we're going down these boulder fields, and those photos I post on Facebook where we're kind of leaning in the cliff and there's a lake below us and it's like this.
Yep.
There's this little green path you can walk down, and Phil's in front of him. I'm like, Phil, are you afraid of heights? And he's like, well, no, not really afraid of heights. But I have 58 pounds on my back and I got 9 pounds in my hand, and it's a long ways down. And I was like, yeah, I got you. So we get over and around, drop down, go across this huge boulder field. And at a certain point, I'm like, maybe these guys, I don't want to be an asshole. Maybe these guys want to go a different way. And I look back and I'm like, hey, dude, do you want to take off to the right here? To the left, it's boulders or, grass, whatever. Phil looks up, he goes, it sucks either way. Just go. So I'm like, all right. So we get down to this kind of a saddle and we plan the stalk. Well, Phil, we just stayed up top. So we lose Phil for a while because total it's probably a mile and a half stalk, and then the last part's 1,000 yards from where he left us.
Jeez.
And the mosquitoes are just horrible. And which is the only thing about this jacket I brought that was good. Mosquitoes couldn't sting me through it. Other than that, it sucked. So I put that on, and I watch, and I'm like, man, where's he going? I'm looking at Braden, who's kind of on an elevated position above me, and we're doing the hand signs. I don't see him. Well, finally, I find the sheep, and I'm like, looking like an idiot. I'm like, point, glass, curly horn, me. I'm like, I see the sheep, right? So,
because it's not legal to use radios in Colorado.
I might be. It's more of like a probably an ethics thing, I guess you could think. I'm not whatever, the most ethical guy in the world and everything. I like frontal shots and stuff we've talked about, but it is kind of nice to do it with just hand signals or whatever else. So with Braden, we're trying to signal each other back and forth, and I have no idea where Phil's at, but I can see some rams. And so he gets in close, and now the angle, he went from straight down, right? And in Gillingham's theory is uphill, you end up shooting lower. And I didn't buy that on the theory, and I don't know, we can have Gillingham on here, and he'll confuse you like he does me with all his knowledge on archery. But Phil, I hear the bow go off, and I'm like, okay, I'm from Oregon, but I can count 3. We got 2 arrows left, and that one hit a rock. And I'm like, what's going on? And I see the sheep. So he shoots, I think, 2 more times, and he actually grazed the bottom of one. We watched it for a long time. And I'm like, so I'm looking, and it is so steep. Like when I got down to him, I reenacted aiming that high. It was almost to a point where you couldn't aim any higher. I don't know how to express Phil's look on his face or whatever, like when I got down there, but you could see like he was contemplating, like, one, how do I practice? And none of these shots were like chip shots. They were, 65 to 80 yards, which is farther. And I've had people ask me, why didn't you get closer? I'm like, why didn't I think of that? Well, we couldn't get any closer, right? He practices a long ways away, and leaving what's ethical and what's not, out of it, that's for everybody else to decide. In most cases, if you're at 13,000 feet or 12.5, there's no trees to hide behind. And when they're embedded in a grassy meadow and the wind is, swirling, potentially can blow them out, and you get to that grassy edge, which in this case where Phil was, that was as far as he could go. Now, Phil and I were talking about it, and he's like, man, do you think I should have waited? And I'm like, the wind 35 seconds after you shot blew straight to them. So they would have, and once they smell you, we really wouldn't have been able to see them. So
right.
Anyway, so
you take
all
the
that
first, I think you take the first shot that you can make. When I'm stalking an animal, if I get within, if I'm very competent at 50 yards and I stalk to within 50 yards, often that's the shot I'll take, rather than risk trying to get to 30 and take a closer shot when I'm proficient at 50. Now, sometimes I choose otherwise to get closer for whatever reason. It used to be that shooting at 50 yards was really, really out of my range. I was not proficient at 50 yards. And so I would need to get myself to within 35 yards or 40 yards. I just didn't feel comfortable with that extra length. But as I got better as an archer, 50 yards became very, very easy. So, my rule for me is, hey, once I have a shot that I know I can make, I'm taking it. I'm not waiting to see if I get a better angle or I get a better, once I have a shot I know I can make, I'm doing it.
Yeah. No, and I don't like to get in the whole ethics battle because it's just not worth it, the effort or whatever the case may be, because there's always both sides of this. I've told you I'm shooting my Reinhardt target at 110 yards and I have a guy come over me and tell me I'm unethical and he can't hit the bail at 40, right? So you can look at it multiple different ways or whatever. But leaving that out of it, we're out of arrows and our it's up on the other side of the mountain, and we got to go the other way to get out. So we talk about it for a little bit, and we're like, well, hey, and it was getting late. I'm like, we'll go look. This, obviously we knew he had hit the bottom. I'm like, we'll go look. So we go over there, and like 6 hours of looking around, trying to find anything just to make sure.
Blood.
Something. Nothing. So I drive all the way to the bottom to look into the creek, and I hook way around. And I'm not going to lie, I laid up on him. I got to the bottom of that mountain in the boulder field, and I'm looking up, and I'm like, I'm going back to camp. I'm like, I can back up that mountain again. So I get over to camp, and I actually texted him, and I was like, hey, dude, I'm going back to camp. And he's like, yeah, we're on our way back too. So then, we came in one side of the wilderness, we're hiking out the other now. So everybody told me, don't go this one way. Don't go down this drainage. Don't do it. And I'm looking, the map. I'm like, doesn't look that bad. I plot it out. I get the compass out. Shoot right down there. So we're bebopping right along. I'm like, man, these guys are full of shit. No problem. And then we hit the, pickup sticks in the bubblegum forest. I'm talking tree over tree over tree at, 25 to 40 degree slope. Boulders. We're like, rolling over this law. And it's forever to get down this thing. And finally, we get to the trail, and his brother came and picked us up. But we get to the trail, and there's still 4 or 5 miles to go. And pretty beat and tired at that point, right? You've climbed probably 20,000 vertical feet, gained and lost, I'm guessing, in 5-6 days.
Yeah.
You're looking rough, right? And so Phil, I saw he was kind of limping along. I'm not going to lie to anybody. My bottoms of my feet were starting to get a little hot spots, and he's kind of limping along, and he was using boots, and they were leather, and they stretched. So he doing that side hill action constantly. So it's funny because at one time, me being, I didn't know, he's so tough. I didn't know how much pain he was in. I'm like, dude, you want me to get your pack? He's like, no, I'm good. Well, then later I tripped and fell. And of course, he's a smart ass. He's like, oh, dude, you want me to get your pack? Are you hurt? Are you injured? Well, so we finally made it down to the trail. And luckily, it was actually perfect timing. We got there. His brother came 20 minutes after we got there. And so we're trying to figure out now. We know we've got to go back in. And I'm like, well, we're not going in that way. He's like, yeah, hell no. No, we're not going to hike back in that way. So I plotted out last night, talked to Phil, looked at Google Earth a little bit where we're going to go in. We're leaving Wednesday to go back in. Now, the lucky thing with all of this is I did spot a ram that's legitimately 185, maybe 190 in this other area by where we were, a couple miles away. And it had 13 other rams with it. Dang. So we're going to try to hike in. The problem with this area, well, there's a lot of problems with this area. It's 7.5 miles just to get to where you make the climb to the top. And it's bushwhacking a lot to get in there. So we're going to go in maybe 5.5, 6 miles on the trail, another 1.5, 2 miles off the trail, and then make the final climb and hopefully find these rams. It doesn't look like they've been pressured. We would have seen people, I'm pretty sure, if they've been in there. But we are taking a big reassessment of the gear situation. I can tell you that right now, because we had too much for one going in. Not too much, I would say, but there's certain things I would definitely exchange out. Like we chose the bivy tarp method, which was great for one of the nights when we were in the cliffs because we couldn't have set up a tent. We thought, little deductive reasoning, we thought ahead of time we probably would need a bivy and a tarp because of the situations of not having enough room. Mm-hmm. Well, we ended up camping in these huge grassy spots by lakes, and we had to climb up every day. And so we're probably going to take a little bit bigger and lighter shelter just for the simple reason it rained every day a ton when we were in there. And we stayed dry. We had tarps over bivvies. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if you've spent 12 hours in a bivvy, but I personally don't like it. And if you got to do it, you got to do it. It's not horrible. But, if we were to reverse it, if we got stuck in the cliffs, the only option we would have had is a bivvy. So you never can guess it exactly right. I think we're going to take mega tarps this time just because a little bit bigger space if the weather's bad. But we had I had tried some new clothing out that was sent to me to test, and yeah, I froze my balls off. It was bad, right? Like, I mean, it got to a point because when we left, these guys had some clothing, and I gave them one of our parkas each. They're warmer. They're a little anyway, good wind blockers. Well, of course, then I'm the jackass because they're like, "Oh man, these are nice," and I mean, I'm literally shivering like constantly. My rain gear leaked, and I know better than that. I mean, I was like, "Yeah, I'll try this stuff out, whatever." Like DWR finish, right? Like most DWR finishes aren't great, but these guys were like, "Man, it's awesome." Well, DWR in Swahili means you're going to get wet sooner or later, right? It's coming through. Well, I thought, well, I'll use this for light drizzle moving around on the side of the mountain. Like basically, I put emotion into my gear choices, which I try to never do. Me emotion meaning, oh, I'll help these guys out and whatever else. And for some stuff that may have been okay, but for this specific trip, there was a specific set amount of gear and a set items that I had pre-picked out from my experience being in that mountain range.
Yep.
And like a dumbass, I didn't bring that stuff. And I knew better. I knew that I should bring it. And like it's give an example, a Sitka cold front jacket is a very good example. A little bit heavier, but it's waterproof, windproof, pretty warm. That's a good jacket for up high like that. The First Light Un Compadre or the Lost Park Parka, the insulating jacket from Faro and First Light, those would be really, really good because they're really windproof. So, I mean, without going into bashing tons of different companies' gear, there's certain gear that's made for 13,000 feet, and there's certain gear that's made for hunting in Arizona.
Yeah,
I chose some gear options for probably Arizona. It was bad.
Oops.
And I knew better.
Yeah, this summer, just about a month ago, we had a family reunion in Utah, and it was in the mountains. It was at 10,000 feet, and down in the valley, it was like 100 degrees, 105. Up at 10,000 feet, it rained every day and hailed golf balls, and it was almost like 35 degrees. We came with sandals and shorts and t-shirts because we were expecting 109 degrees.
Yeah.
Well, we get up there and it's really like mountain winter hunting. And it was a pretty miserable week. We were all struggling to stay warm. And when you don't have the right gear and the right equipment and you're in that kind of climate and country, it's just that's a recipe for disaster. Yeah. But it's also, if you don't die, you're going to be freaking miserable the whole time. And that's got to affect the success, the outcome of your hunt, right?
Oh yeah. And we've talked about before, other podcasts and what you and I've talked about. And, not saying there's anything wrong with this theory. It's just not a theory I agree with. The theory of if it rains, I'll hike out. If I need a headlamp, I'll hike out. If I need something, I'll hike out. There is no hiking out in the area we were at. I mean, for example, in the position we were in and the way we needed to hunt these, we were dropped off. There's nothing to hike out to, for one. But let's say best case scenario, there was a truck at the bottom. Well, let's put things into perspective. Phil's a trained to hunt national champion, arguably one of the most fit guys in the bow hunting community. Let's just say I'm average, right? Braden Forsyth is literally one of the fittest guys you'll ever meet. 12-pack abs, kind of guy you look at and you're like, you suck. Well, we couldn't have hiked back in from where we came out. So there is that kind of advice is what worries me if people listen to that. 'Cause sometimes there's just no hiking out. I mean, there may be hiking out, but you're not coming back in. So in this case, like you said, my life wasn't in jeopardy because I have the way ahead to get in my bag when I get back to camp, strip down naked. I get in my bag and I get my body core temperature back up.
Start a fire.
Yeah, well, no, there's no trees up there. That's the problem. I didn't see trees for like 6 days. I was all kinds of lonely. I was hugging them when I got down there. I'm like, I love you, trees. I'm going to burn you now. So, but up there's nothing to burn. So
right, that's right.
It was interesting. I mean, I learned like we brought you know, we could have probably dropped one more stove. Two of us brought stoves, and instead of three, but we probably could have went down to one. We had some 15 power binoculars, a spotter, and some tins. We divvied up gear fairly good. I brought a little bit more high caloric intake. I had a little bit more, like 3,600 calories a day in food, which still with that much climbing isn't enough. I only did lose actually 3 pounds on the hunt, which isn't horrible. A lot of that's water weight. But as far as like gear choices, my clothing choices was a bit poor. Our sleep system, while we stayed dry, it was basically a Kafaru tarp over a Rab bivvy. It wasn't like our life was in danger. It just sucked because we were stuck in the dang bivvy for so long.
Yeah.
And, I brought camera gear. I brought a 70 to 200, a 16 to 35, and a prime 55.
Mm-hmm.
And lens wise, I used every lens. I got really cool photos, but my pack was heavy going in. And none of us ever had to say, hey, hold up, or I can't make it. But I mean, every step I took packing all of that stuff, I was definitely thinking, okay, I'm just going to fling one of these freaking lenses off the side of the cliff because I don't want to pack it back out. So I'm going to change things up there.
Well, I was going to ask you back on the rain gear thing, like, in your experience in that condition, you named the Sitka cold front, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I was in Alaska and Prince of Wales Island, I used, I read a bunch of reviews, did a bunch of research, and a lot of these guides and outfitters were really going on about the Kuiu Chugach jacket.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and got it. I think it had been out maybe a year and a half or something. And I took it with me. And since then, that has been my go-to rain jacket. I'm kind of like, before that, I used a North Face but it was kind of loud, but it was waterproof. I mean, I could take, a fire hose and it would stay dry, right? I mean, it just could stay dry. Well, I hadn't found anything in the hunting clothing. I had even bought some original Sitka. The first year or two, they produced some stuff and it leaked. So when I got my hands on the Chugach, I was like, well, I'm going to bring my North Face just in case, but I'm going to bring this Chugach as well. And if it doesn't work, then I have my fallback jacket, but I want to test it because it's camouflage. It's quieter. There were some pros to it. So I bought that jacket, and dude, we hit just epic rainstorms. And I'm from the Northwest, where I've been in some week-long torrential downpours. This was insane, and it flooded the whole basin we were in. Turned from little streams to rivers. In 7 days, it rained and seemed to never stop. Anyway, we went down. So we got some more cleaning to do. You got those plastic bags?
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, we're gonna take some photos here. We got a stream right here. We'll clean them up. Get off this mountain. Maybe we'll see another buck on the way down. Get one for Travis.
All right, so it's about 8 o'clock Monday night. We're still in the tent. Oh, turn that light back, shine it on the ground. And as you can see, right outside the ground here, if Brian would hold that light still, that is water pooling about an inch deep in the grass. It's like a sponge.
Just give me your water filter, dude. We'll get it right here.
Yeah, we don't need to go down to the river no more.
I'm not joking, man.
Well, now we're getting blurry, but anyway, we're about to have dinner, and can't get anything dry. We're starting to soak into the tent, but we're gonna figure something out here and keep going at it.
And that jacket, I was out in the rain like all day, every day, and that jacket never leaked. So
that's arguably one of the better hunting rain jackets ever created.
And I don't know what they did, but because it's worked for me, that Chugach jacket, it has been my go-to jacket if I'm expecting wet weather. And I wear it. That's what I'm wearing. And so my buddies all bought the same jacket, and they're experiencing the same thing. We've used it now for years and multiple trips to Alaska, and every time when we're in those heavy rains, it breathes well and it's kept the water out. So
Right now, it's time to just make the most of it. Travis, my friend, he's put together some delicious lunch. He packed in, what, a giant salami.
Well, a couple of giant salamis. But now that we got nothing better to do, it's much better eating than bagels.
Yeah. Man, this rain is brutal. I think we might be here for the next few hours, man.
It's nap time.
Yeah. This isn't too bad, actually. I'm just gonna take a nice little nap here. Sleep it off. Wait till the rain goes away. Hopefully it does soon. If not, we'll head back out in the rain.
Yep.
I hope not. I hope we're getting toward the end here. I think it's a mini miracle. It's stopped raining. And we're thinking about going outside. About you, Travis?
It's been 15 minutes. It's the most dry, calm weather we've seen. I think we take our shot.
Yeah. Well,
Still can't see more than about 50, 60 yards.
Everything is damp. There's a little creek outside or underneath our tent. You can feel the cold water flowing underneath it. Oh, but I gotta get out. Those deer better be out feeding or something, because I like to see me some game while we're up here. Oh, get me out of here. Wish us luck. But if you're gonna hunt Alaska, Prince of Wales?
Yeah, our idea of breaking camp every day, not working so well in this weather.
You know, there's just some serious rain, so I'm not sure that that's the tent I want to use.
I feel blessed to live in Portland now.
I want a little heavier tent, I think, a little more with a little more room, since you're trapped in there with your partner the whole time.
Eating Mountain House.
That one day, we literally just watched movies all day long. I mean, you couldn't see from here to Travis. I mean, it was like 6 feet you couldn't see, and it was pouring rain and the wind was blowing. I mean, it was like, well, I couldn't, we hadn't actually seen where we were at. We didn't know there were mountains over here and there was country. I thought we were on like a little peninsula and there was nothing else.
A couple creeks on the other side of us, and that was it.
So anyway, it's been pretty cool. So let's get back and fix this. I think there's blood coming out.
All right, out for day 5.
I haven't tried any other jackets. Now I have heard that the Sitka jackets are pretty nice as well.
Well, the cold front I like because it's also, there's wind blocker, like fleece inside.
Yep.
And so it's a little heavier, but for me, I'll skip a layer. Where I might wear like a fleece, a merino base layer and then a fleece layer and then a jacket. I may leave that fleece layer at home if I know the temperatures like up there are going to be really drastic. There's no happy medium. It was either like 70 or it was like 45. And the winds, right? Wind blocking jacket's important. I have an Odie, it's OTTE, is another, what I would say is comparable to the Sitka or the Kuyu Chugach as far as not an insulated or a lined rain jacket, but a standard basic,
shell.
16 ounce or less shell, 12 ounce, whatever. It's made of event. The Chugach is Tourier fabric. The Odie is made of event. None of it's cheap, but it does breathe and it will keep you dry. They have pit zips, which are important. The reason why I brought up the cold front is I actually traded a tripod to my buddy Grant at One Shot Gear, and they're big Sitka dealers. And I'm not a overly huge Sitka fan. Not that I have any issue with their clothing is great. I just, over the course of the years, I just stopped wearing Sitka, but I'll still wear it if it's deemed necessary. Like if I like it, I'll wear it.
Yeah.
So that jacket, I looked through all that, but dude, I thought I was going to have, thank God he wanted my tripod. I thought I was going to sell a testicle. It's $650. I was like, that thing better gold for that much money. So we traded and I'm like, okay, dude, I'll try it. Well, I have another jacket from Swazi. It's from New Zealand, and it's called a tar, which is probably my favorite jacket. You look like an axe murderer, right? It's like goes down to your knees, and it is kind of heavy, but like a lot of the guys up in the territories had used it and they lasted. Like Clay, my buddy Clay had one for 15, 17 years.
What did you call it?
It's a Swazi is the company, and it's the one I have is called the Tar, Tahr, like the animal.
Yeah.
And the guy that owns Dave, that owns Swazi, is pretty freaking funny. I've seen him at the shows. We've BS'd before. He's a hilarious guy. But if you guys ever see like the green hoodie I wear that says Swazi, they're just fleece tops, and then they have anyway. They make good clothing. I'm probably going to bring that Sitka or that Swazi and just suck it up and look like an axe murderer on the side of the mountain, because the thing is even though you look like you're wearing a dress and you're getting ready to serve, Swiss Miss Mocha or whatever, it does keep your ass dry, right? It goes to your knees, and then I wear gaiters. There's only a small amount exposed. I don't really need to wear rain gear. But when you get hung up, like pinned down, it's an insane wind blocker as well, and I can literally tuck my knees in it and then just curl up in a ball.
Keep your butt dry and get your legs up in there. Yeah. That sounds warm and cozy, like you're wearing a blanket.
Well, the hood's got like a clothes hanger type thing in where you can really mold it to how you want it. Like I said, if you get past,
it sounds like some kind of like science fiction cloak or something.
You know what you look like is like the man from Snowy River. It's like a duster, but with rain gear, right? And when I first saw it up there, I'm like, man, I'm not wearing that. That looks horrible. And then it kind of grows on you, right? I mean, after a while, I'm like, that does kind of look badass, and it is slimming for larger gentlemen. I noticed Clay put that thing on and he immediately dropped 30 pounds, and then he took it off. I'm like, oh, you're fat again. So I'm going to wear it just for that reason alone. But either way, I'm probably going to bring that, just if the storms like it were, if it storms like it was, like, my initial plan was I'm going to bring a Kifaru Lost Park parka or a First Light Uncompadre. It's synthetic, good wind blocker, whatever the case may be. I thought if it's a little colder, I'll bring the Lost Park. If it's a little warmer, I'll bring the First Light. And then I was just going to bring the rain jacket that we were just talking about, the cold front or the Swazi, and a T-shirt. And that was it, which I know will last me anywhere. That I can make it through anything with that. Because if it's hot, I'm wearing the long sleeve merino shirt. When it's cold, I put on the parka. When it's rainy, I take off the parka and I just put on the rain jacket, or I put over the parka. It's more of a altitude clothing system because it's pass or fail. There's like far ends of the spectrum. Your rain jacket may be a little bit heavier, but it doesn't matter because you're skipping a couple intermediate layers. Anyway, I didn't do that, and like a tard, I was like, okay, I'm going to wear this really lightweight down jacket, and then I'll wear this other thing over it, and then when I need rain gear, I'll put the rain gear on. I got 17 different layers, more than I need, and not one of them was worth it. I mean, I don't know if it's from, because I cliff tested my body and my pack a few times along with my camera gear because I fell off and rolled quite a ways. And I don't know, because I had a hood on, if when I put my heavy pack on, it stretched the stitch line between the body and the hood, because that thing leaked like the Iraqi Navy. I put it on and immediately had running down the back of my neck, and I can feel water dripping in my butt crack, right? I'm huddled up like this, trying to keep my legs dry, and I can just feel water pissing down the back of my neck, and I'm like, it ain't right. Like something is leaking badly, and I'm like trying to feel it. And at this point, I'm so wet, it doesn't matter. And I have a river running through it right down my butt. I mean, it's just pissing down. So finally the rain stopped, and I was able to assess the situation a little bit better. And I was taking in some heavy water up here in the neck area. And I'm like, well, man, that's the number one place that the damn rains. I'm like, the rain hits. So anyway, I'm not bringing that system with me this time. Other than that, I tried an Anchor battery pack. I used to use Nutrient. Oh, I still do use Nutrient, but I got an Anchor. That thing was super kick-ass. I got 5 charges off of my big phone with it. I tried a couple new Zebra headlamps, and you can see the future with them. They're ridiculous, like 1,200 candle power. those worked out really well. We didn't have too many, other than the clothing, we didn't have too many gear failures. We like nothing too crazy. My buddy wore some lightweight boots that they shredded, but he knew. Oh, I got Casey with Mountain Ops asking me about footwear. So Casey, when you watch this, I'm replying to you right now. Like they were Solomon Quests. Super comfortable boot. People like them, but I always suggest don't wear them on a sheep hunt. Those things weren't worth $2 by the time we were done. Just too much shale and everything else. They're a damn good boot though. Yeah. Other than that, we learned bow mode sucks on steep angles. We learned that.
What's your recommendation for the number of arrows to bring on a sheep hunt?
Oh man, I don't even want to get in the ring with that whole subject, because even on a mule deer hunt, I'll bring 12, 15, 16 arrows, man. I like to shoot. Well, there was
you're not going to be caught without ammo, are you? You're gonna,
no. Have you ever seen he's got one arm and he's got 5 guns? You're like, gee, like you got one arm, you have 5 guns. And he's like, well, I don't want to get shot for lack of shooting back. Well, that's me. I don't want to get caught with no ammo. But there was a thread on Rockslide a while ago, and a guy said, how many arrows do you take on a backpack hunt? And I was like, well, I take 4 to 6 in the quiver, and then I probably take 5 to 6 in my pack. I'm like, whether it's a 3-day hunt or a 6-day hunt, I'm probably going to take that because I like to shoot stuff, Well, then, of course, guys get on there. If you need more than 3, you're an idiot. Or, oh, you don't know what you're doing. Of course, most of those guys have never backpack hunted. And in the case with, like, Phil, the argument could be made if you're a guy that, you need to be within 30 yards, 40 yards of shooting, and 60 to 75 is too far, whatever. But, making sure the bow is on, thinking of shooting in dirt, and the bow is not on. Or the bow is on, but he hit a rock. Missing a couple times because of a steep angle, and then confirming that the sight tape didn't move from all the rain or whatever, and then he smokes the rock. Pretty soon, there ain't too many. There's a lot of wounded soldiers laying on the battlefield. There's like only a couple good soldiers left. That's like, or you could have carried an extra 1,000 grains and 3 arrows or whatever. I think his arrows weigh 428 grains. Is it really that? If he would have brought 3 more arrows, we would have been hunting. But instead, wounded soldiers were laying all over the battlefield. We had to hike our asses out a couple days early. So I would not say that a certain specific number, because everybody's different and everything else. But I know when I backpack in for mule deer, I have, like this year, I'm using a 3-arrow tight spot quiver. It's just, I levels my bow up a little bit easier without the weight. Oh, I'll have 10 arrows in the side of my pack, because if you can shoot grouse. If I see a couple grouse a day, I'm having grouse for dinner. Well, I don't know how many
Mountain House.
Oh yeah, and I don't know how many people have shot grouse, but arrow retrieval with an 80-pound bow and grouse is pretty much non-existent. It is more the exception than the rule. And I shoot judo tips, and sometimes I'll whack them with a broadhead. It just depends. But I always, I don't want to waste meat, so I shoot up high. Well, when you shoot up high specifically, it's not like the arrow's slowing down a whole lot with a grouse neck or a body. But with a judo tip, even then, like, I've had them fly off taking a judo tip to the chest, right? They suck it up like a man and fly down some cliff, and you can't find them. So either way, I like to bring a lot of arrows.
Yeah. Oh. Well, that's good, dude. So it sounds like that was a you could have hunted a couple more days if you had a few more arrows.
We physically, Phil's a tough son of a gun, and so is Braden. We could have kept, hunting. I think the biggest toll, the cliff climbing and stuff, we were just stretching, rolling our IT bands with our Nalgene's and everything. That's what's getting tight. So we were doing that, but like that trip down really, I think, took the toll, that 7-8 mile trek or whatever the hell it was out. And these aren't exact numbers, so if I said,
dude, how come you don't listen to people, dude? How come you got to do it your own way? Hike out the trail where everybody told you not to?
Oh, it was, well, I can tell you why. You had to climb back up over the top to go out the other trail, and I'm like, Yeah, we're going that way. I'm not climbing back up over that thing, and I don't know if it would have been worse or better. I mean, hopefully we'll shoot a ram and find out. But yeah, it was an interesting trip to say the least. And I mean, it was super fun, and Phil was in a great mood. So was Braden the whole time. But this next time when we go in, we're going from the valley floor in, which means about 7,800 feet in elevation is the starting point, and 13,000, between 12,500 and 13,000 feet is the ending point. Now, for those of you haters and guys that pay more attention to what I say than maybe you should, if I said earlier in the podcast it's 6.5, 7 miles out, and this time I said 7.5, it's because I legitimately don't give far it is. I just know it's a long ways, and I haven't tracked it. I just know it's roughly a long ass ways out. So I've had guys shoot me PMs. Aaron, you said in the first part it was 5.5 miles out and 12,000 feet, but then later you said 6 miles and 12.4. You know what? Use like the mean, median, and mode, and figure it out. It's a long ways out. I didn't take a micrometer or whatever and figure it out.
Got it. Good to know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to take the photos you gave me and I'm going to put them into the podcast. I think they're going to be they're going to help people see what you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The pictures definitely tell the tale.
So, not to belabor a subject, but if you were to walk away with 2 bits of advice from this whole thing, what are those 2 things?
One would be, don't be a dummy and take gear that hasn't been tested, which I say all the time, and I went ahead and did it anyway.
That's because
I'm an asshole.
That's right. You're an asshole.
And then the other one would be, and Phil and I talked about this a lot, 2 very experienced shooters. If you can somehow mimic the same, and you and I talked about this yesterday, as hard as it is, if you can find a way to mimic 40 to 50 degree angled arrows, if you're going on a mule deer sheep hunt, you need to try, because Phil, arguably one of the best shots in Colorado. Where do you shoot 50 degree slopes, right? I mean, 20, 30, that's easy. It would have been to go out and I would say the 2 biggest things, 1, try out the gear, but 2, go out and test at those angles, the angles that you may be, the opportunities that may be given to you. If that's a 50 degree slope at a 50-yard shot, make sure your bow's sighted into your rangefinder and you are, what's the word here? Cognizant of the fact if it says 44 degrees and 56 yards, that you may need to shoot it for 52. Get your internal cut chart figured out. I would say the third thing that we left out in here would be physical fitness and nutrition, because I can tell you firsthand, some guys that I've taken into this area to go hunt, it eats them alive. I mean, people can say, like I saw somebody posted, why would you camp at the bottom of a boulder field? A rock could roll on your head. It could, yes, but you weren't there, and when it's the only flat spot anywhere around, you have to deal with what's giving you. And in this case, like, without physical fitness, we wouldn't even have seen a ram. Without nutrition, we wouldn't have made it the 6 days we made it. So those are pretty big, pretty important, as well.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were talking about it the other day, practicing those angles for those distances, I was like, where would I do that? And, I finally figured out, well, there are a couple of cliffs around my place that I could practice a long shot like that at those angles. But I'd have to, I have to be creative and find those places, because they're not at any kind of archery range.
Yeah, and I don't know if this will work. I'm going to grab a photo here real quick. It may not work, but it is really a very...
Because that's steep, man. I mean, that's like and
so,
length.
In this photo here, which is hard to tell, down here was the rams, and up in this stuff was Phil. Well, ooh. You can't even. And that picture doesn't do it justice. But when I got over there, it was so steep. like literally, you know, I'm taking because I brought my own rangefinder as well. I'm clicking and it's so steep. I don't think like it's going 47, 50, 51, 47, depending. I've never even seen my bow do that unless I aim up a building. So yeah, it was pretty dang steep.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Cool. Well, when do you go back? Next Wednesday?
Wednesday or Tuesday. It depends, but Wednesday or Tuesday.
And how long are you going to go for?
I'm not 100% certain, but I think we're coming out Monday, or we're coming out. Okay. This time we'll have a vehicle because we're coming in from the bottom. We're gonna have a cooler, basically with another 7 days of gear. And if we need to, run into town and shower and head back in. But I'm feeling good about this one. I think that big ram's gonna die.
Sweet.
I hope.
That'd be sweet. Well, good luck, guys. I'm rooting for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, Phil's he needs a break, man. I tell you, between the shop and being delayed opening up the shop and everything else, and then the two misses literally at the trailhead, or at the shop before he headed up to the trailhead. You know, he's shooting groups like this at 80 yards, so to miss inside that range, or I thought he was going to fling that poor bow down the hill. As you could just see, like he just didn't know. Like it was one of those. He told me, he's like, dude, when the shot went off, it was one of those ones you can just walk away and say money, and then I missed. He was
yeah.
So it was a bad deal.
That gets into your head too. That's where you're like, I gotta. That's why you're shooting at a rock later, because you're like, I gotta find out if I can rely on my equipment and what I'm doing here.
Yeah, and I mean, he
stuff out.
The rock he shot at was a very far distance, this big. So I would have done the same thing. I'm like, oh, it's a little rock in the middle of a big green patch. The chance of me hitting that rock aren't good. I just need to confirm. Smoked it, pinwheeled it right in the middle, just smashed. And I'm like, another wounded soldier.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on again, and let's do this again in a few days, and let's get some more in before you go on your trip. We have some other topics we want to cover. So anyway,
okay.
Good luck, man.
For sure. I appreciate it. I will. I'm sure I'll talk to you soon enough. And thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Bollocks.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.